Hey, Redemption, Josh again. We're in episode 4 of our series, Counting the Cost of Sin, as we seek to wrestle with what does it mean to fight indwelling sin. And one of the ways we can do that is count the cost of sin and to choose a better way rather than the fleeting pleasures of sin. We want to choose a greater treasure, Jesus Christ. And so today, the fourth one, we're going to talk about our sin reveals our unbelief, that the cost of our sin really shows that we don't trust God. And so in the scriptures in the Old Testament, there's this people that God saves out of Egypt. It's called the people of Israel. And so, right, he saves Israel out of Egypt. And he does it by these miraculous wonders. He has, you may have heard of the 10 plagues. Then he parts the water. Even before that, he fights on their behalf. He guards them with a pillar of fire by night and the cloud by day. Like, God just does all these miraculous wonders. They're seeing it with their very own eyes. He's parting the Red Sea. He's doing everything. And in the midst of their journey, they start grumbling and they start complaining. Like, they've seen God do amazing things that nobody can do. And he's declaring himself as God of all the earth, both above in the heavens and below on the earth. He is God and there is no other. And yet they still have the audacity to look at God and say, well, we don't like it here, right? Or we don't want to go, or we need more food, or we need water. Why would you bring us out here? We're going to die. And Moses looks at them, and who's leading them, and Moses says to them, your grumbling is not against me. Your grumbling is against God. And later in the New Testament, the writer of Hebrews talks about how their grumbling is actually revealing a lack of faith, that their sin against God reveals their lack of faith in God to be who he is, to be who he says he'll be, and to trust in what he's already done and what he's going to do. So it's just this complete, utter failure to believe and trust God. And Tim Keller, in this book that I've been reading, he says that sin always begins with a character assassination of God. That when we really go down this road of sin, as we start to think about what we do when we sin, we really are going down and we're actually not believing in who God says he'll be or what he has done. And so it's this idea that we actually kind of end up like Adam and Eve in the garden, and we start questioning, like, does God really love me? Is God really for me? Does God have my best interest at heart? And so when we start to think about all those things in moments of temptation or moments of sin, when we start sinning, right? Like, we start to question the goodness of God. We start to question the love of God. And then it leads us in unbelief to now supplant God with whatever idol or whatever else we think is going to save us in that moment. There's this story in the Gospels of Jesus as he's coming down from this mountain. He's been transfigured. He shows his glory to some of his closest disciples. And he comes down, and this dad whose son has a demon, he brings his son to Jesus. And he says to Jesus, he looks at Jesus, and this is not the beginning of Jesus's ministry. Like, the word is out on Jesus that this guy can do awesome things. And he's been doing crazy, great things. And as Mark says, he does all things wonderfully well. And so this guy brings his son to Jesus, and he says to Jesus, the dad says to Jesus, if you can do anything, help me, help my son. And Jesus looks at him and says one of my favorite things. He says, if you can, right? Like, so this guy doubted whether God, Jesus, could actually do anything to help his son. And Jesus says, if you can, he says, all things are possible to him who believes. And then the dad says something that I think we all identify with. He says, Lord, I believe, but help my unbelief, right? In these moments of weakness, as we count the cost of sin and realizing that it reveals our unbelief, we can be like that dad who says, Lord, I believe. Like, we can choose to believe in the goodness of God for us in Jesus Christ. We can choose to believe in the love of God for us found in Jesus and the grace of God. But we know that we wrestle. And so we can say, Lord, I believe, but help my unbelief. Right? The aim of this whole thing is to see that we might choose to follow closely after Jesus. And he loves us, and he knows us in our weakness, and yet he loves us still. And so, Redemption Church, as we count the cost of sin, I would encourage you to choose Christ and to go with him, go to him both with your faith as well as with your doubts, and trust in him always. All right. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.